Hey guys, so this video is going to be about the importance of light and shadow in drawings. I'm sure you have created a drawing and you've been really happy with all of the details, but there's something that's still just not quite right. It looks a bit flat, it looks a bit lifeless, and you're not sure how you can improve on it because all of the details are there. But the thing that you're missing is an understanding of how light and shadows work. And as artists, we need to understand that light and shadow are as crucial to a piece of artwork as the details are, as the proportions are. It's important that we have these lights and shadows in the right places in order to give the illusion of that three-dimensional form on that 2D flat surface, whether that's a drawing or a painting or even a pastel piece. In this video, we'll be exploring why light and shadow are so important in drawings and paintings, and how we can use them to add depth, drama, and realism to our work. First off, let's talk about why light and shadow are so important. Simply put, light and shadow help to create the illusion of three-dimensional form on that flat surface. Without them, our drawings would just look flat, lifeless, and boring. But beyond just creating the illusion of three-dimensional form, light and shadow also help to give depth and dimension to our drawings. By utilising that lighting and the shadow, we can make certain areas of our drawings appear closer or further away, and we can create the illusion of volume and mass and structure and form with our drawings or paintings. We can also use our lights and shadows to give a sense of mood and atmosphere in our drawings. We can give it something that a photo doesn't necessarily give it. We can manipulate the direction and the intensity of the light. We can create a range of moods from something that's bright and cheerful to something that's dark and foreboding. So, how do we actually use and manipulate and change the lights and shadows effectively in our own work? Well, one key principle, and I mean this is a basic principle, is that light travels in a straight line, which means it casts its shadows in the opposite direction to that light. That means if you want to create the illusion of three-dimensional form, you want to create that realistic structure, you're going to need to pay attention to the direction of light and the shadows that are being cast. The shadows are just as important as the proportions and the details within the subject that you are trying to capture. You have to understand the anatomy and the form of the subject that you are trying to create, and plot those shadows, sketch them on, draw them on, paint them on in the correct places in order to add mass, structure, and realism to your work. Now, this isn't a how-to guide, so I'm not telling you how to add the shadows for every single individual subject matter there might be. But what this is telling you is that for every piece that you are trying to create, not only do you need to think about the proportions, but to improve, you also now need to start thinking about the shadows and where those shadows and where those highlights are going to form based on the structures of the subject that you are trying to create. Unfortunately, it's not as simple as just blocking in those shadows where you see them. Another really important factor to consider is the intensity of the light source. A really strong direct light is going to create really sharp, defined shadows with very hard edges, whereas a softer, more diffused light is going to create a softer, less defined shadow. And understanding the intensity of the light is going to help you manipulate the mood and the atmosphere for your drawings, and it's going to help you to establish round forms, sharp forms, hard forms, and very, very strong structural differences. You've got to look for the shapes that the shadows cast, try to identify and group the large blocks of shadows, and then combine that with the different edges. So softer edges in some places, sharper edges in others, and combining those two can really push a good piece of art to a great one. One key thing that I see a lot of beginners that are aiming for realism make mistakes with is the details. And I don't mean their ability to paint the details, but what they're doing is adding too many details, and they're over-sharpening their painting or drawing, and that over-sharpening makes it look flat and, if I'm being honest, amateurish. So we need to soften some areas, and we need to have some areas that are sharp, but to really take this up a notch, we also need to consider what happens to details in different lighting scenarios. A little bit of science here. As light bounces off an object and reflects into our eyes, our brain is going to interpret that signal, and it's going to create an image that we can visualize. The more light that reflects into our eyes, the more information that is sent to our brain, so the more detail we can visualize. As shadows are the absence of light, or the absence of direct light, there's going to be less information sent to our brain, so those shadowy areas will have less detail. Now, there are exceptions to this rule. So for example, if you're in a dark room and your eyes adjust to that dark setting, you can start seeing details in the dark. But then if someone switches on a light, everything just goes bright white, you lose all those details. This is because of the constricting and the dilating of your pupils, and the way that the rods and the cones, which are the sections of your eyes that actually perceive that light or are the receptors for that light, react to those intense changes in light. In either of those scenarios, so normally where the lights are in detail and the shadows aren't, or in that intense light coming from a dark room where the darks are in detail but the lights are not. In both cases, there's still going to be detail in those extremes. But it's our job as artists to decide which details to focus on and which to just imply are there. We're trying to enhance what we see and improve on it in our paintings. Whether it's from life or you're working from reference photos like this piece here, we are always trying to add something to that work. Finally, it's important to pay attention to the values of light and shadow. Values refer to the lightness or the darkness of a given area. They play a crucial role in creating the illusion of three-dimensional form. You need to make sure that your lights and your shadows never ever cross over in value. You want to make sure that you have definite shadow values and definite light values, and even looking at your reference photo, if you cannot tell the difference between what is light and what is shadow from the reference, you have to make sure it is obvious what is light and what is shadow in your artwork. By paying attention to those values of light and shadow, we can create a real sense of depth and a real sense of dimension in those drawings that aren't necessarily there in a photograph or aren't necessarily even there in real life, but we are adding to and we are enhancing reality. I'm an artist that focuses on realism, and I often actually see amazing reference photos that would make absolutely incredible drawings, but I don't ever use them. I don't see the point in trying to create a realistic drawing from a photograph that is already better or as good as something that I could create. If I can't add to the reference, if I can't improve on it, then what is the point of trying to create something based off it? If I'm just trying to replicate that photograph exactly. Every piece that I do, I'm always thinking about how I can enhance that image. What can I add personally that nobody else can? Whether that's mark making, whether it's abstracting up, whether it's changing the colours. For my drawings, so this one is in charcoal, usually it's all about manipulating the shadows and the highlights to produce something that's different from that original photo. Something that's more unique and provides a new experience for the viewer. And it's all about creating things that somebody else cannot do. That is your style, that is how you develop and grow as an artist, that is how you are perceived as a great artist, because you're doing things that nobody else can. And one of the simplest ways to develop your artwork and improve on your drawings and paintings is focusing on those crucial elements of light and shadow. They give that illusion of 3 dimensions and form to your drawings and paintings. And by paying attention to the direction, the intensity, and the values of those lights and shadows, we can easily add depth, dimension, and really atmospheric and intense or calm and bright moods to our work. It's what's going to make you go from an amateur, good artist, to a professional, amazing artist that other people are looking up to and are striving to be like. It's what makes the difference between just a good piece of artwork and a piece of artwork that makes the viewer just really, from the bottom of their heart, go, wow, that is an incredible piece of art. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video and you've found the things that I've been saying in this video helpful, informative, and it's now really giving you something to think about in your next piece of artwork. If you have enjoyed it, please do give the video a like, it really helps me out, and hopefully I've earned enough and impressed you enough for you to subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to watch another video related to this, then why not check out this video where I go through 2 different ways to achieve realism in your work. As always, thank you so much for watching, good luck with your own artwork, and I'll see you next time.